เริ่มนะครับผมอาจจะขอพูดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษแล้วกันนะครับ Okay, good morning and welcome to the second day and the second and last day of the 11th ASEAN International Conference on Credible Government. I think yesterday we had a very full but productive day, and I'm sure today we will have a very interesting, informative, as well as something that everybody can take home with. Okay, I think I would like to spend a little bit on the yesterday discussions. Yesterday we have a discussion on building trust and the term credible government. And we have a very good debate on which one started first, whether we have a trust to have a credible government, or we need to have a credible government to have a trust. And I think we don't have to conclude with the debate, but this is a very interesting discussion. But yesterday, OPDC also provided a very strong definition of the term credible government. I think the definition is very important. Okay? I mean, whatever we want to do. I had an interesting discussion about my colleague from Sweden the other day. My colleague from Sweden said, Sweden is trying to join NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organizations, right? And so he asked me, Professor, he's my academic colleague, he said, Professor, what do you think? I said, well, what NATO is, what NATO stands for. Like we all know it's North Atlantic Treaty Organizations. So he asked me, why did you ask this question? I said, we have to know what is the definition of NATO. Right? It's a defensive or offensive military alliance, okay? Because I say, well, Sweden is very defensive country, peaceful country, but for the past 30 years, NATO has been engaging in many military activities outside North Atlantic regions, right? Afghanistan, Iraq twice, Syria, Libya, and so on. So it's, you have to know the definition. So yesterday, we had a very good discussion on definitions, like what is represent the credible government. So we have a series of different speakers and panelists, mention about credible government means maturity through continuous learning and capacity building, which is very important. Learning, capacity building, maturity. Otherwise, you're not credible, right? This is part of what OPDC, or Office of Public Sector Development Commission, call public employment. Then we have a discussion on where there's a need to recognize the engagement with the stakeholder. We have to have a two-way communications. And I think this is what we call public communication. And by the way, public communication is not public relation, it's a two-way communications, right? Public relations tend to be a one-way communication. We also have a few common approaches and practices, okay? So we talk about the awareness and the appreciation of the term inclusiveness, right? To be credible, you have to be inclusive. You have to appreciate participation. You have to have the ability to engage with all stakeholders, whether the stakeholder are, elder generation, disabled group of people, working people, or youth. You have to be able to engage with different groups of people. And I think yesterday, the many speakers highlight that we have to be able to engage. For example, the speaker from New Zealand said you have to be able to engage with people like the parent, especially during COVID. We also need to have capability to collect and utilize the data continuously. Yesterday, the keynote speaker presented by Deputy Governor of Bangkok Metropolitan Administrations mentioned about, ability to collect the data, real-time and on-time basis. And we have to be able to use it because having the data alone doesn't make sense. And I think for the public agency, we have data all the time. For example, when I pay taxes, the Department of Revenue know exactly who I am, my name, the age, and my profession, and what time I paid my taxes, right? They have all this information that normally they don't use because they already know how much money I pay for my tax, that's all, right? But if I log in, to pay on the e-payment at 10 o'clock in the evening, that's a very useful data, okay? And it's free of charge. You don't have to collect it because you automatically record it when I pay taxes. We also have to realize, the differences between e-government and digital government. I think this is very critical. I think the speaker from Joy Foreign Chamber of Commerce in Thailand mentioned a lot about the differences between e-government and digital government. Changing the form to PDF and download it is not digital government. For the foreign business community, it still takes 4 days to complete work permit and visa, which is a little bit, cost inefficient perspective for them. We also need to be agile. We have to be able to deal with uncertainty, and COVID taught us a lot about surge capacity. In Thailand, we experience, many surge capacity scenarios. For example, we have to build field hospital or โรงพยาบาลสนาม We have to be able to have that surge capacity. What about yesterday? The keynote speaker from the Digital Government Agency and also OPDC mentioned about, you have to be able to register people, for the COVID vaccine. That's a surge capacity because, trust me, without COVID, I would not register to any Ministry of Public Health information, right? But because I was afraid to die, so I registered to get my COVID vaccine, okay? And then we also look at different issues like openness, inclusiveness, engagement, participation. And then we also talk about the importance of, credible government in social services. From the speaker from Vietnam, he talks about non-business services like education, healthcare, public park. Those things represent non-business services, or in Thailand we call social services. And Deputy Bangkok Governor mentioned about livable city, which is all about social services. So I think credible government means that you have to also focus on, being a good social service provider. We talk about data utilizations. I mentioned earlier about ability to utilize data. For example, when you go and get services at 7-Eleven or any convenience mart, okay, normally the cashier always enter male and the age. Because I asked my student, I said, what did you put in my age? He said 60. He said, no, you're wrong, I'm 50, right? So, they have to enter two pieces of data. And then they'll know exactly, this guy is a male, age 50, and he often comes to 7-Eleven at 8 a.m. in the morning to get coffee. So that's a very useful data that, the convenience marts, businesses, they often collect. And it's free of charge, okay? So we have to find a way to utilize data, and I think OPDC has been focusing a lot on ability to utilize data. And again, yesterday, I would like to personally compliment OPDC of inviting business operator like JFCCT to speak, because a lot of seminar like this, I think public agency often try to avoid inviting private firms, to come and give feedback. So I think yesterday marks a very important milestone for hopefully for many public agencies, that we talk about engagement with private sector. We also have to show that we really mean the engagement. And I think yesterday OPDC showed the courage, to really engage and then invite, the private sector, the business operator, to speak and share the pain points. And I think yesterday the message was clear. There were many good things coming out from the reforms in the public sector in Thailand over the past decade, but there was also a lot of room for improvement. I think today we have a very full day ahead of us. We have 4 important sessions. We have 4 outstanding keynote speakers, and I'm glad, the first keynote speaker is very energetic, and he will talk about, why open government matters. I think open government is very important. It's a foundation for being credible. It's a foundation of becoming a credible government. And I think, what do you mean by being open? How do you make it open? Okay. Public sector tend to be very close. I work at a university. We operate as a closed system. Right? we think that we're important because as a professor, so the curriculum designed by the professor, used by the professor, evaluated by the professor, which is not a very open system. So I think we will learn something, about being open to the very outstanding keynote speaker. So I would like to welcome, to the podium, Mr. Mohi Sagar. He's the CEO and Editor-in-Chief of OpenGov Asia Singapore. So Mohi, please welcome.
Can I just take this mic? No. Thank you for that, Professor. That was very enlightening. Okay. I would like to thank OPDC to bring me over here, Director yourself and the team. I am going to spend the next X amount of time trying to explain from an open gov perspective what is open government really and how it works and how it operates. So if you were to look at my screen, please, let me tell you a little bit about open gov. Now, we've been around for almost a decade, and our mission is to try and help public sector, healthcare, education, FSI, which is financial institutions and insurance, plus now manufacturing and industry on their digital transformation journey. Now, these are very big words, are they not? Digital transformation, because that involves the target keeps moving. And it moves pretty fast because technology is moving fast. And we do that with a digital platform. We do that by bringing people together, just like OPDC is doing today. It's getting people and interviewing them onto our platform. But not just that. It's getting people to learn from each other. That's very important. Now, if you fast forward that, you bring in the consultancy arm and you bring in the advisory services arm and you bring in the academia arm, it changes. But let's talk about why we're here today. Okay, and the big thing about why we're here is we are living in a very, very complex world, right? It's really tough. And just when we thought we had seen everything, it gets tougher. Now, let's go back about 4 years. Nobody thought the whole world will get hit by COVID, right? Not the whole world. I mean, yeah, the Western world thought it's Asia who gets hit with all these problems. But really, to take everybody out and that fast shows that are we prepared for the future? And I'll come back to that. And the reason I'm saying I'll come back to that is because as the world is shifting, the problems are amplifying. They're getting bigger. Now, there's a massive difference between the East and the West. Very important to understand that, right? And what does that really mean is we live in an absolutely connected world at the same time, right? In that connected world, we are being affected pretty heavily by what happens locally and what happens internationally. The borders that we talk about so much in the past are not the same borders. And the professor right now mentioned about NATO and its job. I don't talk from a political angle. I talk from a civil servant, platform. I care about transformation and getting better, so I stay out of politics. But it's very interesting to see how that one word has a massive impact on where we're heading. So this was not predicted, right? It wasn't. I mean, we were battling COVID. Who was going to get ready for a war? And a war of that scale. A war that's going to affect and is affecting everybody globally. And what's happened in the last 48 hours, where the food supply may come to a standstill, is going to impact what? The poorest nations that need that food more than anybody else. That's hard. Now, that is a responsibility of a government. Individuals can't do anything about that. Governments collectively have to take that burden on. And this is going to come back to the word, what is open government in a bit, right? So you fast forward, unfortunately, the war, and you look at where we are, okay? The whole idea of government to make itself open is to build one word, trust. Okay, that word is very hard. It may have only 5 letters, but it's a very, very tough word. And if you look at our region, I'll go our region, then I can go towards Europe, and I'll go to the US and come back, between the East and the West, all the way to Australia and New Zealand. Very few governments are trusted. Right? Very few governments. Now, why is there a lack of trust? So let's get into that a little bit more, because when you see trust, you know what, my friends, we forget two things. Trust is a two-way street. If you think government is the one holding its citizens, then the citizens have to trust its government that they will be held. You cannot have that act with one person saying, I got you. You got to have both parties saying, I will work collectively. Right? So these are baby steps. You don't become strong overnight. Okay? It's a journey. And as you build on that journey, you pick and choose where you think you can cause an impact, and you focus towards that. Now, the health system around the world got a massive beating. Fair? They saved us. They saved us, but a lot of countries changed a lot of governance. And open gov is about governance, not just government, governance, right? So my company that I work for, OpenGov Asia, is trying to get governments and private sector to keep changing its governance. That's a strength. Because that means you're willing to accept what you said yesterday may not be applicable tomorrow. Just may not be. Why? Because things change. And as things evolve, you've got to change your governance because it impacts people. Now, I'll give you a very small example about certain countries. I'll name one, Singapore. When COVID happened, Singapore has a governance of how you can access government data. Okay? Some government data can only be accessed from on-prem. Fair? But COVID happened. And these government officials were not able to go to the office. So Singapore government changed its law, its governance, by saying we will give access in this time frame to the people who work to be able to access their data, the data from home. Right? Then Singapore became the epicenter of COVID. And people ran. A lot of people ran. A lot of the Indians, and I can say this, you guys cannot, but a lot of the Indians went back to India. Right? But you know what happened? Then India became the epicenter, so they couldn't come back into Singapore. The Singapore government had to change its law again to give these individuals specific IP access to a certain amount of data so they could keep on working. Now, do you think all the governments in the region did that? Nope. They just said, it's okay, you can get access right now because it's COVID. And you know that big joke that went around that said, the CEO cannot change you, the CIO cannot change you, but COVID can change you? We use that as an excuse to do anything. Anything. But that wasn't changing governance, my friends. You got to change your rules to stay on the right side of the law. That creates trust. And the moment Singapore government said we will live with COVID, they changed that law back again to restrict the accessibility of data. Some very important points, right? So every country is grappling with this in the region. But I'm going to focus on, of all the things that everybody's talking about, why trust is so important. Because when you trust somebody, you're willing to listen and obey the law, which means the people who are making law are keeping the citizen in mind first. Now, India has 1.4 billion CEOs. Are you aware of that? Every citizen of India is a CEO. On top of that, every citizen of India is a doctor. If you have a problem, he or she has a solution, an ailment for you. Do not worry, I will tell you how to fix yourself. What that means is when they are not law-abiding, they feel the law should not apply to them. And that's not just India. Okay? I'm picking on India because I come from there, right? So it applies to everybody where it says it's convenience. And convenience, my friends, is not a solution, because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, right? If you look at any human being's basic needs, we have surpassed that chapter of basic needs for the most part. For the most part. That's the scary bit. There's another stat I'll throw at you. 62 of the top billionaires in the world can feed this world completely. Completely. Only 62 people. Not 600, not 6,000, not 600,000. 62 individuals can feed the world and take it away from its hunger. Will they do it? No. So when we talk about basic needs, citizens looking at government to say, what are my needs? Is my infrastructure working? And am I living a life that I should be able to live? Now let's talk about the word ecosystem. My friends, you all probably worked from home during COVID, right? You know what people call that? Digital transformation. That's garbage. That was no transformation. We just let you work from home, whoever we was. Now, in my organization, and I have people who work in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, we're just hiring people in Thailand, you know, Singapore, Australia, India. They have always worked from home. I don't believe that I should make my team members navigate traffic every day for 2 hours. Why? That's 2 hours of being non-productive. That's 2 hours of sitting in most cities in high polluted places. That's 2 hours of you saying, I could be doing something better with my time. And don't get me wrong, some people read, some listen to podcasts, some watch complete garbage, okay, on their phone to keep themselves entertained. That's okay. Nothing wrong with all that. But I'm just saying every day. Now, what also happened was our culture changed, and I'll talk about culture in a minute, during all these things that happened, right? It changed pretty massively. But in that ecosystem, what are we looking at? I'm looking at not only healthcare, but when I interact with my government, because see, if I don't like Singapore Airlines, I can pick Thai, right? If I don't like a bank, I can pick another bank. But you know what? I only have one government agency to work with. If I need a driving license, it's only Department of Transportation. I can't go to Ministry of Health and say, give me a driving license because I don't like Department of Transportation. We don't have that luxury. So sure, in a democratic country, if we don't like our government, we get to vote and change that government. But we all know how hard that is. We all know how hard that is. So if that's hard, and it is, then our governments need to step their game up because they should realize they are in a monopoly. Almost. Almost. And I want that monopoly on those people who are in that high position to say, we will take care of this. And not just fall back and say, it's okay, you know what? Is it okay for us to stand in line for 1 hour to get served? It's not. That's 1 hour of my life. But you know what? If you go to an office somewhere, and these are also with banks, by the way, so it's public and private sector, if I have to stand for an hour, I'm waiting and wasting my life every time I do that. Now, I advise lots of government in the region. Imagine an airport. Now, I landed here last night at, I think, about 10 o'clock. The efficiency is scary of how good and how fast you clear immigration. It really is. But there are certain countries where I go, I'm in line for an hour and a half. What does that mean? You're not helping your economy at all. Can you imagine 15,000 people standing in line trying to clear immigration, which means 15,000 people are not buying a bottle of water. They're not using a cab service or public transportation. They're not buying food outside, which means you're slowing the intake of money. And it's all about money, my friends, because that's what drives the world. We can say it's not about money, but all you guys know it's about money. So you fast forward this a little bit. I'll share this experience. I was at a hospital in India, in a very, very rich hospital. I will call a 7-star hospital. You know, India has that capability. It's got really, really rich people and really, really poor people like most parts of the world. So here's the thing. When you got really, really rich people, The average wait time to check that patient in, where the entire family and friends had gone because that person was really sick, was 3 hours. 3 hours in a private, rich hospital. You know what that shows? They don't care. They don't value the life and the emotions of individuals. Guess how long it takes you to check out? 5 hours. 5. Because all these departments have to get their stuff together and give you a check. Okay, check, check, check before they can check you out. Why? I can live in this hotel, okay, go to 4 different restaurants over here, 4 different restaurants, go to the bar, go use the spa, and go downstairs and say, I will check out. And they say, absolutely, sir. Bang, here you go. Which means the technology is available, and the requirement and the demand, and guess what? The need is there, and they have done it. What's the difference between a hospital and a hotel? They both evaluate their ROI on the number of beds that are occupied, right? See how these two industries work? So when they cause so much of grief, and that's what they're doing, they're causing grief. You're standing in line, you're wasting your life. You're wasting your life. And I keep saying that over and over again. You know, when you sleep, some people say you are rebuilding. I say, I should tell my grandmother, you're wasting my life. You keep telling me to go to sleep in the afternoon. Then you tell me to go to sleep in the evening. That's not fair, is it? But that's how we are. We've been built on that system. So here we go. We talk about this a lot. Now, I know that's a joke, my friends, but you know what? Non-action is not acceptable. Non-action is not acceptable. So when hospitals are not acting, and other industries are, you know for a fact that everybody who had experience with that particular hospital will never go back there again. Now, they only get that chance once. They will never, ever get that chance again. So if you are not structured from the get-go into your DNA to be citizen-centric, and really let's understand what those words are over the next few minutes. We hide behind the word security, right? It's an amazing word. Now think about this a little bit. Before I play this video for you, okay, or maybe I should play the video first and then share with you. Please listen to this. It's not new, my friends. This has been around for quite a while. Okay, but I'm gonna step over here so you guys can watch what's happening over here.
Talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay.
But
Have you had this cat for a while?
yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6/12,
Nine.
95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's, you know, it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Now, that's not new, right? And what I'm trying to show over here is how easy citizens will give information and will get tricked. Now, if you go back, my friends, pre-tech, a country or a government had to protect its citizens by its borders, right? So you got the Army, you got the Air Force, you got the Navy, you may have coastal guards depending on which country. But you had a line, and government could see where the attacks were coming from. Fair? Right? They knew it. They had the intelligence. But now we live in a cyber world, a highly digital world. It's all connected. And now, if you have a population of 60 million people, you have 60 million vulnerabilities. That's not enough. I'll share something else with you. In ASEAN, we have 650 million people. And you know what we do the moment we start traveling, because we all love to travel? We log into an airport Wi-Fi the moment we land in a different airport. Right? Look at the connectivity. Now, you may be working for the Thai government, which means you probably have some sort of data on your phone, which means when you land in sunny Singapore or sunny Malaysia or sunny Indonesia, it doesn't matter, you've logged into that Wi-Fi. Now, without realizing, you've compromised Thailand. So check out the responsibility that the governments have now, which they never ever could navigate before, and they didn't have that before. So we then use that as an excuse of not doing what we should be doing. We use that. Security is such a double-edged sword, right? And we'll say, oh, you know what? That data has to be resided in my own country because it's sovereign and it is my citizens' information. Sure. I get PII, you know, your personal identifiable information. We all get that. But what does that really mean? Because we give our data out to everybody. Yet, we're using that as a blockage. Now, we know these stats, guys. Okay? We know these stats. And as you navigate these stats, we're expecting our governments to hold us all the time. And that is very hard for government to do. Because when a government does a great job, we don't thank it. But the moment they do something that is not to our expectations, we criticize it. Right? Because that's how our DNA is. We're built that way. Now, look at these disasters. And guys, there's more disasters, natural disasters taking place today than ever before. And we all see this, right? Okay, and the question that comes down to is, who is responsible? Well, actually, what? This began hundreds of years ago. It's not new. But if you look at global warming, and you know what the funny part is? Some people think global warming is a myth. They obviously can't read data, because data tells us otherwise, right? We know it's not a myth. We know we're destroying our own Earth, right? And here's the thing. People think, oh, a flood is not as bad as a fire. I don't know who comes up with these things, but they're all equally bad. Because a flood is going to contaminate the water, which is going to create more bacteria and viruses, which are going to affect the people who probably don't have the ability to go to a hospital. And that has a ricocheting effect all the way up the food chain. So, yes, we look at all these things, and because unlike COVID, these are incidents that don't take place in our own country, we skip the channel just like this. We skip it very fast because it's not affecting our daily lives. And our ability to navigate what's in front of us is all we can do. Right? So these floods that are taking place, the fires that are taking place, the natural disaster taking place, is a reflection of how we are doing things. And the question is, who takes the responsibility for all this? Okay, now Singapore changed its policy the other day, last year, and said, you know what, it cannot just be digital only. Digital first. Because exactly what the professor said this morning, inclusion, my friends, is a very big word. You got to get people involved. And who do you have to get involved? Our aging population and the new kids in the block who think completely differently. Grandparents and grandchildren today are the most disconnected grand ever. Okay, you go back 25 years ago and grandparents and grandchildren were this close. They don't speak the same language for the first time in our history. Right? And we're expecting different results. You can't get different results. It won't happen because we don't understand the problem. Now, you know what happened when COVID happened? China shut down first. It just shut itself down because it's known what to do. And I'm not going to say what's right or what's wrong over here. But guess what happened? Every country followed suit. Why? Because nobody knew what to do. The data wasn't around for them to make informed decisions. And if data was there, they were not making informed decisions. It's called a copycat syndrome. Right? America was one of the first few countries to open up. Again, without data. Without data. And guess what other countries did? They opened up. So we are following. Now, please understand something. I'm not here criticizing. I'm here merely giving facts so people can make informed decisions. And I was speaking to somebody from Singapore, from the health system last week, and I said, I'm giving this presentation, and what does open government mean to you? And he's a very high person in ranking in Singapore. And he goes to me, Mohit, have you seen the movie A Few Good Men? I was like, I have. He goes, you can't handle the truth. That's the problem. We all know where it is busted. But who will take the first step to try and fix something that's busted? Because we are in a war zone right about now, and I don't mean a physical war, I'm talking about a digital war, my friends. Which means we got to create the word trust all over again. Because if we do not do that, it's not going to take us very far. So you got people who also have to innovate. You got to push the envelope, right? I mean, in Singapore, just 2 days ago, they announced that Grab was going to buy out another taxi company, which means cab companies in Singapore are going to get smaller, which means one company is going to get bigger. And that's happening globally. A lot of monopolies are being created. But when you keep pushing the envelope and you're talking about openness, you got to talk about data, my friend. Right? So if you don't have data, you don't have insights. But you also have to have tools. You also have to have tools. Because to harvest information from data, you've got to make sure your data is accurate. So now I've given you two words, security and accuracy. Two amazing words that people hide behind, and they use it to their advantage. My data is not accurate, so I can't share it. Well, your data will never be accurate. I'll tell you why. Your data is biased because your governance was based at the time when you knew what you knew, so you made that decision. You can go back and question that decision. That decision's okay. There's nothing wrong with that decision. But now you will make a more informed decision. Think to COVID, guys. We had a 14-day quarantine period. Every government used it, right? Then they knocked it down to 10, then to 7, and some have 5 now. That's because data is giving them insights. They're not just reducing numbers because they want to reduce numbers. They have information that can give them information that says, hey, we can move this out. So what's the hard job here? It's creating transparency. But with that, you got to create accountability. Why? Think about this. We make decisions because we have a feeling. You know that feeling is another word for feeling? It's called experience. You know what? That's a very old word in life. My friends, experience used to be amazing 30 years ago. You know why? That individual who had 25 years experience could remember things. And the new person, the new kid in the block could not because he or she had never gone through that. Now, you can search for that either through Google, generative AI, anything, it doesn't matter. So you don't have to have that. It will give you 55 examples instantaneously of exactly what you're looking for. So the word experience now has a very different connotation to it. I'm not saying it's gone. All I'm saying is it has a very different connotation to it. Okay? But at the end of the day, we are going to look to strengthen our countries. That's where we're going. So we talk about democratizing data. Big words again, right? And we always say open government means open data. But let me ask a question. Whose data is it? So if you go to a hospital, you check in over there, they do 55 tests on you, you pay them 300 million baht. And then you say, I want my records. Oh no. Then you go to another hospital and you say, I think these are my problems. They'll make you do the exact same test again because they don't trust the test. Nah. Okay, the system is broken. So you gotta fix the system in its entirety. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. Now, how do you fix that system? You take small baby steps. The same way when you have a child, you never give your child a full meal when he or she's born, do you? You drip feed it. You know, starts off with mother's milk. Eventually you're going to try and say, okay, we'll give you a different kind of milk. Then we will introduce one solid food, then the other, right? So why do we think that we can fix something that has history of over thousands of years in 1 minute? Because we can change governance. It doesn't work that way. Okay, and here's the thing. Just because you have a tool in front of you doesn't mean you know how to use it, my friends. And you look at this guy behind me. Has no clue how to use an axe. But you know what? He's seen it in movies 100 times, a million times. You smash it and it breaks. That doesn't make you an expert just because you've seen it in a movie. And I love when people tell me, Mohit, how does that government do this? Can I copy it? You cannot copy it. Plagiarism, which I advocate, no problem. You can copy. But you must know how you're copying it, and you must know how to make it local. Otherwise, it ain't gonna work, right? And as you navigate through this so-called journey of saying, let's become open, you're gonna get resistance. Get ready for that. Why, you think you can just wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna change the world and we'll just let you change it. It won't happen. You will get resistance in your own family, with your own friends, and in every other place. Now, what's happening in the world today? Think about this. America has a cough. Okay, Europe is sneezing. Asia is very strong. Financially, it's very strong. It's showing every sign of growth. Yet we are slowing down because they are talking about inflation. They are, right? It's them that are going through uncertainty of who they want to elect as the president. We are all going through the same thing, but our systems are stronger. In Asia, even though we don't trust our governments as much as Northern Europe does, we expect a lot from our government. We look at our government to be our guardian, to be our angel. That's our culture, my friend. And you can't change that, my friends. You cannot change culture overnight, even though we tried to do that during COVID, and we're going backwards. We are going backwards. When I say backwards, we're going backwards to pre-COVID era, not backwards in life. We're going back to the norm, what we used to call the norm, and it drives me insane. Why must you have to do the same thing we used to do in 2019? I don't want to commute in traffic. Everybody doesn't have to come into the office. We've proven that. Pre-COVID, your boss did not trust you, okay? During COVID, your boss did not have a choice. Now, your boss doesn't trust himself or herself, so they go back to work, which means you have to go to work. Right? The culture. It's all about that system that we're looking to change over and over again. Now, I can give you signs about culture and content, but I'm just trying to understand, if we want to navigate the future about open government, then we got to help our government get open. And I keep saying this time and time again, you don't have to have a position or a job title to change or help or navigate change. You can do it yourself. You make that 1% difference, and that one will have a ripple effect across the board. So we see lots of examples of this, right? Economic development, like I just said, I think Asia, ASEAN especially, is on a very big rampage. So you put the 650 million I just spoke about in ASEAN, you bring in China 1.4 billion, you bring in India with 1.4 billion, that's half the world's population right here. Pretty big numbers. And all these countries are showing growth. Yes, they have challenges. Who does not have challenges and problems? I get that. But to become open, you got to change governance. If you don't change governance, you create a system where people will break the law. So you got to go faster with that. Now, here are some of the examples. Here are some of the examples I can rattle off. But I'm not interested in praising anybody. I'm just showing you governments are taking the initiative. But you got to ask, who is watching and what are they watching? About 15 years ago, as the internet was coming and becoming mainstream, people said online shopping will not take off the way people predicted. Wow. Okay? People are shutting down their shops because they're believing the online world is getting stronger, right? Here's the next question, my friends. I'm going to just throw this at you, okay, because it's going to be pretty interesting. People believe or don't believe in the metaverse. It's very big. And that is going to have governance change because governments will have to get even more open. Here is the other one. Cryptocurrencies. It is a technology. It's not a currency. It's a tech. And do you think you can stop that tech if you make it illegal and you change and say, I don't want you to use Bitcoin in this country? Okay. But if I trust Bitcoin more than I trust the US dollar, I will use Bitcoin. Because how are you trusting one versus the other? That's the next big question you're going to be asking over and over again. So let's talk about open data. Because if you don't empower people, they're not going to give you anything. Innovation comes from the fact that you have a culture that creates innovation. Okay, it doesn't just happen automatically. And as you do that, you will create transparency. Will you make mistakes? Absolutely. Embrace it. But you know what? You have all heard these words before. I don't think I've said a single word that you haven't heard before, one way or another. The question is, how do you make that part of your DNA, of your organization DNA, of your institution? Because I love what the professor said earlier on. Even in an academic institution, it's that internal body that's making all the decisions. That's not open, right? And you know what that body does? They will throw things out because it doesn't suit that club. Hence you call it a club, right? Governments work the same way, and that's what needs to change. If you open it out, small baby steps at a time, you're going to get a lot, but you've got to involve the citizens. Now, there's always opposition, my friends. Okay, and having opposition for the sake of having opposition doesn't help. You got to have intelligent opposition that helps you grow. You're aware that there are lots of people in the world who do not use data to make a decision, right? They just say it. You've heard lots of people who say there's no such thing as climate change. It's all okay. This is just how the world functions. It's not true. But the whole purpose about service delivery, and please, please, please remember these words, it's the most important things because a citizen is expecting service delivery. I was advising a certain government, and I will not name the government, and I went to the Ministry of Education. Now think about this. Back about 10, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, give or take, every government agency had one mission. I need a website. I need a website, right? And they created website after websites after websites. Okay, now every government is on an app run. I need an app, I need an app, I need an app. Why? How many apps do you think your citizens want to log into? Are you guys governments are going crazy? Because you know what it's called? I will follow the other person. What do you mean, that agency having an app? Well, we need one too. You know, the person on top doesn't understand technology, but he or she wants an app because it's called following, right? So here's the thing. How do you slow that so-called wave of not creating stuff? So I just said, right, I was advising this government, my whole team was there, and I asked this agency, Ministry of Education, how many websites do you have? 203 websites. Hey, it's MOE, Alpha Country, right? Ministry of Education. They have websites from kindergarten all the way up to your PhD and beyond. So I said, that's amazing. 203 websites. Which is the most used website? Nobody an answer. Okay, top 2? Don't know. Top 5? No idea. Okay, then I said, okay, let's make this better. So I brought in, it's called design thinking, 25 students randomly. Okay, true story. 25 students randomly, sat them down in a room, and I said, okay, please tell me, you're all graduating from high school, going to college next. Which website do you use? We don't. 203 websites are active. Why don't you use it? Because they crash. They don't give us the information, so we have to use a broker to get the work done. 3 letters, my friends, OMG. Really? So you have 203 websites, your students don't use it, you're paying for it, and a broker has to help facilitate that. So it means the money is going somewhere else. Responsibility comes into play here. So as you think about these things, you will have to change. You will have to change how we work together. Collaboration. Do we need 1,000 apps within governments? Okay, now one of the most efficient governments or agencies in the world in every country is Ministry of Finance, because they want money. And guess what, honeys? When you want money, you will invest money. And it makes sense. So let's follow and learn of how they are so efficient. Let's follow and learn. And they should be teaching. Nothing wrong with that. We need that. But I will come back to the same 2 words I started earlier on, trust and security. If you can't build trust, okay, and you can't have a secure environment, you will not get your citizens. You won't. It's not going to happen. So, the next big word, sustainability. That's another OMG moment. We haven't thought this through. We have not thought this through. We are on an amazing revolution about let's get EVs out there. Let's go completely green with our power. Do we even understand what that means? Do we understand how much fossil fuel we need to survive for the next 50 years before we say, let's make everything green, either through air or through solar or through hydro? And hydro has been around forever, my friends. But the other 2 are brand new in the bulk, right? Like last 10, 15 years. We don't know. And I'm not exaggerating. I don't have time to go into that. But if I start giving you stats on that, it will scare you. But these are buzzwords. Okay? ChatGPT or generative AI is the next biggest buzzword. It is, but it's going to talk about data again. So it comes back to what I'm saying, open government, right? I mentioned this word. I'm going to skip this because it comes down to how do we keep people informed. But this is it. You have to take action. You got to upgrade your skill set. You've got to use technology. I'm a big techie. I don't code. I'm a techie believer. I believe the future is in the palm of our hands as long as we give it to everybody. Which means you got to make your data available, and government has to take the steps to make that happen. And that is exactly what this event is about. Saying, let's listen to the private sector. Now, you know what? In the Western world, it's the private sector that leads. Okay? In the Eastern Hemisphere, it's government that leads. That's how we are. That's our culture. In the Western world, there's something called MAMA. Remember this, please. M-A-A-M-A. Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Facebook, and Apple. Those 5 companies are bigger than most countries financially. 5 of them. Yeah, and they're the one driving the future. Nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is over here, we expect our government to drive that. and governments then have to bring their citizens on board, then you have a bigger workforce. And by the way, you don't have to pay your citizens. That's the best part. You just have to make things open for them so they can go ahead and do things over and over again. But you can't hide behind the word privacy and security, my friends. Don't do that. Because that is a hindrance. What are you trying to keep private and what are you trying to keep secure needs to have rules and governance around it so you can keep it open. So you've got to build capacity in building. But here, please, this is not trying to train a young graduate with new skills. That's so wrong, and every government is jumping on that ladder. Train the 45, 55-year-old citizen who's been working and upskill him or her, and you'll have a very different workforce, okay? Because the graduate has the skill set, because he or she just graduated. They need experience, and this is massive. We don't collaborate. We work in silos, because that's how we have done things. And just because we've done it in the past does not mean it's good for the future. It's not. It's not good for the future, right? So let's bring a cultural change. And here's it, my friends. COVID showed us that we can change our culture. It showed us that we all can work from home and trust each other and be innovative and be creative and be semi-happy. Okay, we couldn't travel as much, but some countries had different laws versus others, you know, and that's how you drive that whole system. So you bring that change in at its nucleus and say, I will create this journey. I cannot do it overnight. I don't want to do it overnight, because you have to learn as you go down that pathway. I'm going to stop here. Thank you all very much. I hope that was informative. Okay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. Dead on. Yeah?
Any questions from Mr. Mohit? Yeah. Okay, any questions from the Zoom? I think this is very outstanding presentations, and I think you have brought out I think many issues. I think saving time is a very critical part of public sector. I think the OPDC did a study many years ago on the one-stop services, and I think a few cases represent the fact that the government cannot reduce it, the fees, but we can reduce the time for the customers. And I think this is a critical part. I think you mentioned about trust means you fulfilling the needs of people, and we have to really identify what exactly represent the needs of people. And I think you have a chart that you have self, belongingness, and safety, and so on. And I think the very important part is open government means open data, so you have to trust the data. Data is always available. It's a matter of us, using the data that is out there. How we grab it, how we verify it, how we share it. And I think utilization depends on the capacity building. I think this is a critical part. So I think you have brought so many keywords, but I think I think we can learn and pick a few that you believe are something that urgent. But I think all in all, I think the presentation itself, the presenter, the contents, I think are stimulating, and I'm very grateful, okay, for this. Before we move to the next sessions, and we have a coffee break, but before we take a coffee break, I think I was asked, to make sure that people who are on the Zoom, if you can turn on the camera so that we can take photo. At the same time, I don't know whether we have any camera that we can take photo from here. If not, I'm going to want to take photo. Okay, but for the Zoom, are you guys ready? The team พร้อมไหมฮะพร้อมมาที่จะ take photo ถ่ายรูปโอเคครับ so please try to have your camera on so that we can take photos โอเค ยืนตรงนี้ก็ได้ครับถ่ายตรงนี้ถ่ายแบบนี้ก็ได้Okay, so I think for the Zooms, everybody is ready. Okay, let's take photo. So we have guests from many different countries. I think we have more than 100 registered participants from, I think, 8 or 9 countries. So we have speakers from New Zealand, from France, from Korea, from Indonesia. We have from Malaysia, from Thailand, from Vietnam. I think OPTC has done a very outstanding job in gathering people from different countries, regions together and look at the term credible government. And we're lucky to have outstanding speaker like Mohit. Okay,ครับ. So for Zoom, ready? Should I count? Oh, ครับ. If you don't mind having the camera on, please. Okay, ครับ. It's going to be a few more minutes. เดี๋ยวถ่ายเลยก็ได้ถ่ายจากตรงนี้ไปเลยก็ได้ไม่ต้องครับถ่ายเลยก็ไม่เป็นไรแยกครับ โอเคซูมถ่ายเลยแล้วนะครับ โอเค โอเคครับ โอเคครับ Can you just thumb up I don't know what to say but thumb up okay for the Zoom 1 2 3 1 2 3 okay one more time 1 2 and 3 thank you so much okay it's time for us to have a coffee break and please Mr. Mohit is me around I know his flight is not until I think today or later today so I hope you can be around and then talking to us and again thank you very much for the very inspiring presentation okay ขอบคุณครับ we come back at 10:30 thank you
let us sing for
evening, good morning, and welcome to the session after the break. We have another outstanding speaker coming up to present the materials and the contents and the knowledge and sharing the knowledge on building public trust with data-driven government. I think the data-driven government is very important. For example, in Thailand, especially for the participant from Zoom, in Thailand we have a Phuket sandbox. We started in July 2000, I think July 2022, when we start Phuket Sandbox, and it's a data-driven decisions. We look at the capacity of the hospital. We look at the capacity of the volunteers, and I think it is very important because Phuket Sandbox, the success of Phuket Sandbox, led to the decision by the Thai government to open up the country, Thailand, for tourism, for international tourists. So having said that, I think the next subject is called Building Public Trust with Data-Driven Government. We have a privilege and an honor to have the Associate Director from Accenture Thailand, Mr. Vishod Wong Vishod. Please welcome Mr. Vishod Krab.
So, good morning, everyone in this room. Sawadee krab, and everyone in the Zoom as well. My name is Vishod. I'm an Associate Director from Accenture in Thailand. Basically, you might wonder why Accenture, which is a private company working mostly on the private sector, would relevant to such public services industries, right? So basically, we work so much on transforming the experience of the customers. Maybe your end customers, it may be the citizen as a customers as well, right? So we are looking at that and trying to use the technologies as a support on driving that agenda. So today, I'm going to show you how public service, right, and the data, the open government data can be driven with the technologies, and how do we do that? Okay. So as we all know, right, currently we are facing so many disruptions, right? We're having rapid technologies development, right? Blockchain, many regulatings has been changed, right? In last session, you have seen that Kun Mohit has already mentioned that in private sector, we can select how we want to get the service from. You are happy with one bank. If you're not happy, you can go to another bank. But you only have one government, right? You cannot select. Then the government is acting as a monopoly. Sometimes we think that government is a monopoly. But is that true always? It might not be the case. Right? You go to electricity, power in Thailand, right? You don't have that many choices, right? But with the disruptive, with the change in regulations, these might change over time, right? In Singapore or in the developed country, these power, waters, utilities, you have so many choices. You can go to so many places. You can get the price that you want. But in Thailand, in a developing country like us, where the market is still developing, we don't have that deregulated yet. But it will change soon. It will be in the next few years, the next 1 or 2 years, if this government agency or the state-owned enterprise doesn't change themselves. They're going to lose themselves in the market, and then they're going to lose in a competitive market in the future, right? So that's the way that if you're looking at this government agency, they're not actually a monopoly. They have to adapt themselves at some certain level, right? There are some other disrupting event as well. Climate change, Mohit already mentioned that. Do you feel that this year is actually hotter than years before? when we were a child, right, like 10, 20 years old ago, we feel that during the summer, we can still like running around in the sun, right? It's a present summer. But this year, in Asian countries, like in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, we face what we call a monster heat wave, which we never faced before. And now it is already in countries like Japan, in Europe. Right, Japan, those who go to Japan right now, they face like a 40 Celsius degrees, right? It is not easy for them at all, right? So these are the kind of like a change that happened, right, in the climate change, right? And also, if we are looking at the COVID situation, COVID-19, this is a great example, right? People in Thailand, even in the government agency, even in a state-owned enterprise, even in many private sectors, they believe that everyone has to come to the office. 2 years ago, everyone working from home, and it has to be done right away, right? Those companies that haven't prepared themselves, they have to go through so much pain to be able to change themselves from working from their site at office, going back to work from home. Office building has gone haunted, right? And the business of having that business is not going good anymore. Right now, office rented are like trying to lower their rent and trying to get people to rent. But it's not easy. Even myself, I'm still working from home 5 days a week, every day, unless I have to go to the client side. And I believe that in many places, in many companies, even in a government agency, they are having the same policies. Right? You used to write a letter in a paper. Now, everyone has to go through emails. Everyone contact via Microsoft Teams. Everyone contact, call each other using the online technologies. So those are the areas where government has to adapt themselves. They cannot just stay being monopoly and do not make any change at all. So basically, what are the key factors that the public services has to change themselves, right? The first one is on the evolving global crisis. We have seen that there are many cases, right? Instability of the politicals, even in Thailand right now, we can see that people like, we still don't have that a proper prime minister yet after like 2 months of general election already, right? We are looking at the expectation of the people. Earlier on, before COVID, we work in the office. During COVID, we work from home. Now the expectation is back to a normal. It's not new normal, it's back to the new of the new normal. We have to go back to work in the office. We have to get used to that again. We have to get used to the kind of traffic that we have, right? So how do we balance that? How do we balance that, hey, people still want to work from home, but they also have to go to work at the office. In many places, they have to say that, hey, this team, you come on Monday, another team, you come on Thursday and Friday. And the demand of the space is reducing, right? So that they can cut all those costs, right? So these are the changes of the customers' behavior that we have seen. Organization is also changed. People don't want to work in organization anymore. If you see the younger generations, millennials, do they want to come to the private sector? Do they want to be an employee? No. If you ask your child, 15 years old, what do you want to do? They want to be a YouTuber, right? You can't supply the right resources to the high, like even more demand for the workload that you have. Now you cannot get those. They graduate from like Harvard, they graduate from like a very prestigious universities, but they don't want to work in a government agency or even in a private sector anymore. They want to create their own business. They're willing to take risks. They're more than happy to invest, lose the money. And if you ask younger generation, YouTuber, open a coffee shop, right? You can walk every corner and you can get a nice coffee. They invest like $1 million in that coffee machine. They're happy to do so, right? And those are the behavior of the people that change. And even the next generation, we couldn't see how we can handle that kind of like behavior changing, right? And the last but not least, on the technology side, technology has changed so many, right? But let me put the technology at the last one, right? We want to focus first on how we handle with the changes that can happen, okay? So basically, what are the things that we have to look at? Once these changes has come, we have to think with the customers or our citizen as a center, right? What do they actually want? In many organizations, even in the private sector, even in a large organization, multinational, sometimes they want to go to, okay, I want to do digital transformations. This is what we do. We want to implement SAP. We have to implement this CRM system. We have to have this loyalty card. They look at technologies as a center, which is totally wrong. That's a wrong approach. You don't put technology first. You look at what customers really want, right? You design your service, you provide your service based on what they want to achieve, right? That's a concept that is called jobs to be done, right? What is job to be done? Jobs to be done, it is to understand what the customers want to achieve. And then you provide the service to serve that kind of needs for each of those customers. So basically, if we look in that concept of job to be done, right, it can separate into three areas. First, if the customer wants something, some kind of service, wants some kind of products, and as a government agency, we provide a service and facilitate the customers or citizens to do something. They're looking at three things. First, how can they access that facilities or services that you provide? Is it easy for them? Does it have a very high barrier? 10 years ago, if you want to do the driving license in Thailand, you have to go to the DMV, right? The driving license office, which scattered around Bangkok. You have to go there, you have to make a queue. And you queue there for 2 hours, at least sitting still, nothing to do. And 100 people around you waiting to do the same thing. That's inefficient, right? Customers or citizens wants to simplify and make it convenient. Now, even in Thailand, right? I use the example in Thailand because it's like very close to us. And I want to show you how developing countries like us, Thailand, like Indonesia, are doing this, which might be a different approach from a developed country like Singapore or in European or in US, right? Those, they can look at like cardless, everything like no physical at all, right? In developing countries like Thailand, we still have to look at the way Thai people are still being, right? Right now we can do we can go into an application, right? And we can book the timing that we want to do the service so that you don't have to have a long queue at the DMV, right? So that's the kind of like convenience that we are looking at, that the customers as a citizens are looking at. How can they have an easier access, right? We look at what customers want, what they need, and what the organization has to do, right? So they need to involve and evolve themselves to be able to serve those citizens. Second, after they have a proper access, what is the experience that they have when they get that service or products from you, right? What is it, right? When you're looking at the experience, it means that what you need to do, what you need to provide, are you going to walk out and you are being happy or not, right? So basically, earlier on, we have to bring so many papers to government agencies, photocopies of citizen ID, photocopy of house registration, photocopy of marriage certificate, right? Why do you need all those, right? Everything is already in the website, everything is already in the database of a government agency. Wherever I go, they should be able to pull those out, right? Those are the directions that our Thai government are going, right? So basically, they're trying to facilitate this kind of experience. I want to create a new driving license. I don't need to bring all those documents with me anymore. I can just go directly, have an application showing that, okay, this is my last driving license. I want to extend it. It's already expired. Or if I want to have a new photo ID, I can just go to any district office. Doesn't have to go to the original district office that I have my home registration sitting in as well, right? So those are kind of like experience that the customers or the citizens would love. And the last one, once they experience the product or the service that you provided, what is outcome? Can they get the service and product out in a short time or not, right? So what are the outcomes that they can get? Can they get things done easily? Or would they have to like provide data? Do they have to like sign 20 documents and wait there for a long time? No, right? So those are the three areas: access, experience, and outcome, which developing countries and developed country might have a different approach, right? So how do we ensure that those three can be delivered, can be addressed as a public service, right? We have a concept, what we call a total enterprise reinvention, TER, right? Basically, what we are looking at is how the large enterprise can address, serve their service to their customers. And how do we apply that to the way that the public service or the government agency can provide to every citizen, right? First, government agency has to think big, right? Has no limit on that thinking. Whatever they want to do, let's not limit themselves to the boundary or the wall that they currently have. Let's take all those away. One thing that we can do is looking at the approach we call design thinking. Design thinking is looking at customers as center, right? What do they actually want? Let's not use limitation, right? How can they do it? Okay. Secondly, they have to look in multiple ways, looking at multiple dimensions, looking at multiple solutions that's possible, right? Many times, ideas come from different views, different point of view, different people. Whenever you bring the same kind of people into the same room, you normally get one solution. But if you bring team with different experience, different backgrounds, different seniority level, in many meetings that I have with my subordinate, right? I always, like whenever we want to do like a new ideas with for clients, I bring many teams. I bring the business team, I bring the IT team, I even bring the analyst or the associate in the company. And actually ask them to go first on what are the ideas that they have, right? And we normally refine the ideas by combining all those together, right? We are not saying that, okay, I am as a more senior person in this room, this is my idea. Everyone else will just like shut themselves up. You won't get any idea. And that culture won't fly. That culture is still in our country, in many countries, right? Because we have the seniority level. Everyone has to be like open mind, right? Looking at multi-dimensional, break the silos, right? Sometimes when we work, we're looking at like one department only. What marketing want? What sales want? Right? What service want? Right? But we are not looking at as a whole company, how we integrate and give the right experience to customers. Right? You might have seen that many times you call into the call center, you face machine first, right? And then you always see that, hey, is there a trick that you can get through to the real person that you want to talk to, right? So those are the areas where how you design the experience of the person or the citizen that you would like to service to ensure that they have the right experience. And the last but not least, try to think of the new way, right? Don't limit yourself to the way that it has been done. It might be a new way, right? You want to cross a river. There are many ways. Earlier on, you might take boats. You might be able to build a bridge. You might be able to drive to another area and then come back to another route. What would be best options that you might have, right? So the total enterprise reinvention is a concept where we think that public services should be able to think similar way to the enterprise on how they serve their customers. So what are those characteristics that provide a total enterprise reinvention? First, you have to think strategically, right? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve, right? And that also comes with an ambition, right? You want to go higher. What is the end in mind? You don't just looking at the short-term solutions. What's the end in mind that you want to achieve? And how do you want to do it? What is the new frontier that you want to go? You want to go paperless. You want to go single app. You want to go get the data from customers. You want to ensure that security is there, right? No boundary, no boundary. Trying to think of all possible ways, all possible information that might be related, put it in. You prioritize those and see what can be done first. What is the necessary, which is might be different from one situation than the others, right? In developed country, security would be the most important thing, right? Providing a convenience to customers, right? So that they can go paperless, they can go with just only one app, might be good for them. In ASEAN, developing country, we might have to have a different approach, which I'm going to have an example to show to you later, right? Once we have that, we're looking at how we design everything with the human as a center, with the customers as a center, as what customers really want, right? And then now, what is the digital technology or technology that can support that? Now you can see, we use the technology as one of the last thing. We look at the demand first. We look at what customers want to achieve, how we want to do it. We might need to change process to help support that. And then what would be the best technology to support that? It might not has to be the most expensive one. It might be a simple one. It might be like a local technologies that can help support that, right? So digital or the technologies will be the last support choice for us. And the last but not least, how do we continuously improve those experience of citizen or customers? So those are the 6 areas where we want to do. Let me show you one example. This is example of SingPass. Okay.
The even better SingPass is here. Let's unlock whatever you need. This, that, at even greater speed. SingPass makes things short and sweet. Now, let's proceed. When life gets busy and there's too much on hand, let it all go. Even the pen. You're just a tap away from completing the task with a digital identity you can always trust. So chill, sit back. It'll all get done. Faster, easier, safer. It might even be fun. So put your best face forward and things will click in place. Download the even better SingPass now and live confidently today.
that's the approach that the Singapore government take, right? Basically, you can go with this one app. You can identify yourself anywhere. You don't have to carry your ID card anymore, right? And then you can use it to do any kind of like transactions. Okay, they have been a little bit more advanced than what we do in Thailand, right? In Thailand, we do it differently. First, it's still a lot of papers in Thailand, right? We also, the government also doesn't have that collection of data, of information, storing in one place. And if you're looking at the demand or the need of Thai customers, of the Thai citizen, we still want to facilitate ourselves in a different way, not like Singaporean. So let me show you what our government has done, okay? You might have seen this application before, Bảo Tang. Bảo Tang is actually an application by the Thai government to do so many things, right? First, it came out, I think it was like 2-3 years ago. And people just like crazily criticize it in a negative way, right? at the very beginning. But if you're looking at this time, it has, this application itself has done so many things and facilitate Thailand economy a lot. We have it. We can look at this as like a super app, a Grab for Thai government. Inside it has so many application inside or functionality inside. We have Thai government integrated the discount to stimulate the small economies, the economies as a whole, right? Especially on the small to medium size, right? 50-50. You pay something, you get the money from the government to help you pay. You get the campaign of Thai Travel Together, right? I believe that many of you in this room has used it. I use it so many times also, and it's good. During the COVID, we closed our country. Nobody come into our country, right? Our hotels business, they are dying. They were dying. No business at all. And then we were trying to stimulate all those business by having this as an entry point so that you can get discount. You can go, I can travel to Phuket. Very cheap, which I couldn't do it even now. Right now, the price has gone back to like the before COVID era already, right? So that's the area where we help the Thai government try to help stimulate the business. And do you know what? This is the area where we start collecting information, where Thai government start collecting and understand who you are, who the Thai citizens are, what are the behaviors, right? Are you paying tax or not? Right? This is a tool from Thai government, right? They also have this Guardian application, Pupitak, a few years back as well. They're trying to give money away to Thai people who like in need for the money, 5,000 baht. But this won't be easy because you cannot verify who they are. This will help, right? Along with the national digital identification, NDID. Similar to what Singapore has, right? We use NDID to identify who we are, link with the government agency to see whether you are really you or not, authenticate that, right? And also, I think one of the last applications that we have seen in the past few months, it come out, Digital Lotto, right? We have faced a lot of issues, challenges in Thailand. They sold the paper lotto at a much higher price than the face value. And we use this, Thai government use this to help standardize the pricing and ensure that everything is under control. So this is the way that our Thai government are approaching this open government and the data and transforming the whole government into digital agency. Okay, so I hope that this example will help stimulate the ideas in your country at some certain level. Thank you.
เปิดได้เลยไหมครับโอเคครับ so I think you mentioned that part of the thing that you mentioned that the public data might be scattering around but not really stored in one place. So what exactly we need to do, like a baby step that we have to start in terms of storing or locating just particularly one spot, if that makes sense.
Yep. That is one of the main agenda that the Thai government are trying to do. You might have seen that earlier on, data was scattered around and not syncing at each other anymore, at all, right? When you want to pay your annual tax for your car, right? You can pay it. It is with the DMV. When you get tickets, right? You run red lights, you do the speeding, you get tickets. A few years back, you don't need to pay. Sorry to say that. If you don't pay, you can still continuing to like paying tax for your car. Now those two married together. You cannot renew your car license or your tax anymore if you don't pay for the speeding tickets or the ticket that you get from the highway, from the police, right? So that's the first step that they want to combine the data together. And now, once you see this, right, you can go to any government agency with just only one single ID card. Or even now, you can use the app. You can have you start to see one app called Thang Rat. You can go in, link with any electricity bill. You can see electricity bill there. You can see your driving license there. You can see your photo ID there. And you can use it to show to the police as well that, hey, you want to, this is your identity, right? So that's the first step that our Thai government is doing. And they are trying to consolidate this data into one area that we can following other countries, right? At some certain speed, but we are going there. Yes, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like you to and everybody in this room imagine together, because right now we talk much about big data and then also open government data as well. In your perspective, if every organization or every department or every minister in Thailand, they ask their own data. And what is your perspective? Is that possible to have only one organization to combine all this data, or let each government or each department, they have their own data? Because right now, I think that this is really, very big problem for all of us, because the big boss ask us to have dashboard, ask us to have the data, but we don't know that what is the best practice and what is the direction of Thailand should go to. It should be if you can share all this idea to us.
Yep. Okay, let me share the experience from private organization or a large enterprise, right? Their customers might be around 10, 20 millions, which is much less than what we have in Thailand as a citizen. But thinking of that, they also have silos, right? Data come from many sources. Typically, what we want to have as an end in mind is a single source of truth, right? Where you go in, you know that, okay, this is the person, Mr. Vishod, Movi Vishod, this is his ID, this is his date of birth, current address, up-to-date address, right? So on and so forth. Those kind of informations. It should be there in some place. That's the ideal case. But since we have so many ministries, we have so many government agencies, right? And we collect data at different times. we might get, and the data input might be wrong as well. Sometimes you go in, if you like get my information before dip ship, you have to key in the name from the application of by writing. The way we write might be different, right? So information coming from different places might look different. It might look as you have so many Mr. Vishod, but they are very similar. But you want to also know how you can identify that, how to write my name correctly, how to write my last name correctly, right? And in the process, we have what we call data governance and data cleansing. How to do that? So it has a process to achieve that as well. So I think Thai government should have that kind of like end in mind. And the data governance process, data cleansing process, how do we ensure that the data is there correctly? And whenever people that access it, with the right authorizations also, okay, with the correct authorization. Not everyone can access that, otherwise it's gonna be breaching. How do we ensure that people who access has the right to access and can access the correct information? But it should be just one single source of truth.
Okay, thank you very much for your enlightening
ขอบคุณครับ
presentation. Okay. And like I said, I think Kun Vishod cover a lot of subjects. I like the fact that instead of calling public agency, if you look at the slide, it's called public service organizations. You know, that's why I always like, you know, us to be called civil servants, not government officers, because it means something, you know, to serve people, right? At the same time, you know, there's a lot of keywords like total enterprise reinvention. I think is very important, especially for customer experiences and the demands. The diversity is always important because for the public agency, we often, you know, try to be, you know, try to have people who think alike to be part of our group. My personal experience working at the universities and Ministry of Higher Education, we often try to plan ahead in 15, 20 years. And within the room, we often have people who have doctoral degree and have professorship. And if I ask, you know, why don't we bring in people who never graduate from university to be in the room, you know, to sit on the committee, my request would have been turned down because we prefer uniformity over diversity. So I think that's also the big message, you know, from this presentation. So having said that, I think this is an excellent presentation, and it will continue, you know, in regard to the open data. And you know, it's our great pleasure to invite Dr. Thanakit Chinthawon. He is a medical doctor. He is a vice president of Government Big Data Institute, Thailand. So please welcome Dr. Thanakit.
ขอบคุณครับ Oh, nice to meet you guys all. The first question I would like to ask you that how many of you consider that big data or data is important for your life? Raise your hand. Wow, you all. So, like me, because I'm so fascinated in data uses. Like I am the medical doctor, my background and also the management in a hospital. So I think that so many data is important for us in managing the organization. So that's why I think that learning the usage of data would be important thing for us to running the hospital or running the governments and there's so many things that we might use the data. In the old days, we must familiar with management by feeling. Have you ever heard about this before? Like, because I'm the CEO, I think that it would be like this because my experience is this and that. You might familiar with this, right? But in downstate, you cannot work like this anymore because the experience is another part for management decision. But another part is the information or data that you might have the data and then you will direct the organization in the good way. So that's why that we here and work with the Big Data Institute in the Ministry of the Digital Economy and Society. And today we might talk about how important of the data and how do we make it reuse for the solving the challenge. Okay, this is a history of the open data. Actually, I think that by the book took place in 2007, but I think that it might older than this, because it seems that 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, because just something that written in the book is open data already. But in the formulate open data, this might happen in the 2007 and continuous growing day by day until now's day, because the data sharing and open data is most important for us. And I will tell you that why it's so important in having the open data. You might familiar with this. When we think of having the data, where we go first? We will go to the National Statistics Office, สำนักงานสถิติแห่งชาติ right? Yes, this is an important source for our countries in looking for the open data. And the national stat is the first one and the pioneer for our countries to show the open data for us to working on it. And when we realize more about the open data, the DGA, Digital Government Agency, is another organization who incorporates the open data for us within the so many data sets running on different business, like in the healthcare, agriculture, and the finance, education. And you also seen that it would be some data set that you can download and process with it. This is a major step for us to work with the open data, because sometimes when you do the research, you can go to such a data like this and download and to process it further. Yeah, and this is my organization. We have totally at 80 people. Most of us are data science and data engineer. And I think that in this picture, I would be the oldest one, because the average is about 30. 30. It seems that I running a corporate that have so many children. It's so fun for me. Yeah, but they're very brilliant and so effective in running the project, because we are the expert in big data and AI business in the government side, and also the emerging technology that might related with the data and information. We do the business domain driven. It means that we start from the problems of the business and then work on the data to run the data model to support its own business. And also we have the mandate of the cross industry, including public and private sector. And such a project that we have, like this one, we call the Health Information Exchange Platform, HIE, because the problems of Thai citizen is when the patient from the hospital A go to the hospital B, and the doctor might question about what kind of illness of this patient have, and what kind of medicine that they also have. And the most importantly is the drug allergies and adverse drug event, because most of I shouldn't say it. Some of the patients who sick from the wrong prescription, because the doctors orders the wrong medication to this patient because they allergy to this kind of medicine as well. So we set up the platform to do the data exchange among the doctors to oversee this patient. And right now we crossed about 1,000 hospitals in the country, in the 5 ministries who govern the hospital. Like in Thailand, we not just only the MOPS that has hospital, but we also have the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Finance, and their higher education, and also the other ministry, including the private sector, they also have the hospital on their own. So we use this like the sharing platform for the hospital to see the patient history who register in the system. And we hope that in the future, we're gonna use the anonymized data to be the data for the country management in the future, like what kind of illness of Thais have, and what kind of medicine that Thais use, and so it's beneficial for us in the healthcare management. And you might familiar with this one, COVID-19. Luckily, we passed that situation already. In the COVID-19, it's not the sake of the Prasayam Thevathiraj, the god of Thailand, but actually it's from the management. That's why it's caused us to be one of the most effective management, COVID management in the world, because we have the platform for the patient management that called the COVID platform co-link, because in last 2 or 3 years before, patient entry site would be a hospital, would be a lab department, or would be the emergency care. But each business have the facility to support every patient to get sick. So then we incorporate the data. When the patient entry to any points, we might know that the case happened. And then we will direct the ambulance and also the care provider to support that kind of patient effectively. And it's run in the Bangkok exclusively, and also we work with NHSO to do the reimbursement as well. And in the national level, we also incorporate all data altogether for the government to run the country. Not just only these statistics that you might see in the television, but we also have the statistics about how many beds we have, how many doctors and what kind of doctors we have, including the respirator, the usage of respirator, and where is the rest when we would like to use. And also we do the inbound and outbound monitoring, and also the resource management, including the public hearing, to manage the country in the COVID situation. We also have the patient interface platform like the Thailand Plus, and also the Mo Chana, Thai Chana, and so many platforms that we work with. And that part is related with the healthcare part. And the second part that we work on is the travel. But actually it's not start from the travel initially, but it starts from the COVID situation as well. You might remember about the Phuket sandbox. Who ever heard about this before? Phuket sandbox, right? When anyone who would like to entry to Thailand, it would be landed in the Phuket, right? And then after 14-day quarantine, and then they can enter to the country, right? So we work with the immigration, we work with the TOTs, and so many participants to work on their patient monitoring platform. And then in the APEC period, we also upgrade this platform to work with the APEC delegate as well. And lastly, right now we upgraded this platform to be like the travel AI, travel intelligence platform, because we incorporate the data from 4 group of data sets. And the first one is from the government and operator. Government and operators like the mobile and also the port, the AOT, and so many partners. And the second group, we work with the commercial side, like a hotel, like the MasterCard, Visa, and also the commercial areas. And the third one, we work with the social listening, how they talk about the tourist attraction in the Phuket, and what would they recommend for us to go. And the fourth one is the local governor, like the governors of the Phuket province. So when you enter to the traveling platform, you might see the data like this. This is a statistic, how many tourists in the Phuket right now, then where are they? We also have the heat map for them. So like today you plan to go to Lam Phom Thep, and you might see that, oh, it's already turned red. So that's when you would like to take the picture at the Lam Phom Thep, you might take an hour for waiting. So then you go to Chalom Temple before. So it's easy for you to make the decision or it. And also we can do the tracking system by the mobile number, but we cannot identify who's that if we don't have the phone number. But we can locate how many tourists and how many people there. And also we have the youth data platform to work with the social welfare to manage the children welfare and education. And also we have the social welfare platform, because in Thailand, do you know how many social welfare schemes in Thailand? Guess. You try to guess, because I gonna give you a flower. Actually, we have more than 200 social welfare schemes in the country. It's running by the Ministry of the Social Development and Human Security, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Interior. So, and some is missing guy because they didn't get any support from the government. But some is a rich guy because every social scheme direct to them. So then we incorporate all data all together and do the extract the data and run and give the report to the government. So the government might know that this guy get a support from any, what kind of social welfare like this. But in such a, the platform that we might see that is not, it's just a sample. But now stay in the digital technologies of the big data, it helped you a lot in having the, such a data like this. And then we're gonna talk about how they prepare the data for open data like this. And the first one, I think that starting with the objective is the most important, because sometimes we think that the open data is the, like we just observe that where is the open data exists, and then we obtain that kind of data in the system. And when we would like to use, we just download the data exactly is not good for us because we don't know that how they prepare the data and what the reason why they prepare such a data for the country. So we might start from the objective because if we know about the objectives, it's the important one because we will define the scope and what kind of data we need. And then we assess the data and its availability. Where is the data located? Like in the MOPH, in the Ministry of Interiors, or the TTT, or TOTOTO like that. And then you access the data and its availability. And then you might establish the data governance. Because the data is so important, especially the private data. You might heard about the private data law, right? So the data governance is the most important one that we must incorporate all together because to make sure that our system is secure enough to maintain the private data. And then we develop the data management plan, like how to articulate the data, to do the data integration and interoperability. It means that how we work on the data, how to make it work all together. And then we come to the preparing the data, publish the platform, and document, follow up the platform, promote the data use, monitor, and make the initiative sustain. Like this 11 step is very difficult for the data guys to prepare the data for you. Just only have one open data. It's quite difficult for you to work on it. So that's why we have to beneficial for using such a data and also reuse it. So preparing is very important for us. Like in the medical side, you might see that in some hospital, they're writing on the paper, some doctor putting the data in the computer, right? And some hospital might use a different way. So just only incorporate the healthcare data all together. You might have the same standard to talk to each other. And in the world, if you would like to make Thailand can talk to Singapore, can talk to United States in terms of the medical care, you might adopt some international standard. And in our country, we also adopted a program of fast hospital interoperability resources to be the standard resource for the healthcare to talk to each other, because we might talk in the same language. And then not just only the standard that we use in the same standard, we might describe its standard. We call it metadata. Metadata, when you see this picture, you might call it cat, right? But in terms of digital technology, we might address is what is the file name, what is the type of these pictures, and where is the location where the data is taken, like this, because it could be described in more detail. We call it metadata, and also we might have data categories and do the data set. And then we can make it all together to work. So that's why we must use it several times or reuse it, because it's difficult to have. How to promote the reuse of the open data? So the first one is the create of a centralized open data portal, because the difficulties of the accessing the data would be the first thing that we might consider, how to make it easy and how to raise awareness of this and engage the community to use the data and collaborate the stakeholder support the data literacies, how to work on this and make it in the social or networking. That's important for us to make it reusable. And moreover, I would address a few things about because we are the ASEAN community, and we might beneficial from the data usage in our region. So working in the international scheme is an important one for us. Like we can start from the simple thing like the health situation for the Asian community. And we might see that what the similarity and what kind of the illness in our regions, and we can manage all together as a region partnership as well. So this is a key concern for international open data project, that we might have the common vision and we standardize how we work, like the data governance and also the data standard and how we use of such a data like this. And the key factors is the success is the commitment and collaboration to work on such a data like that. Okay, so in summary, I would like to say that nowadays the data is the new engine or the new oils of the country to to have the beneficial from this. But having the data is quite structural and difficult for us to work on it and make it valuable. So let's try to study about how we can benefit from the big data and the open data system, and we will work together soon. Thank you ครับ ขอบคุณครับ
So this is Bob Falk from Joy Foreign Chamber of Commerce in Thailand.
Thank you very much. A very fascinating insight into what's going on, and you've obviously got a large and very capable team of 80 people. I have two questions. The first one, if I can conceptualize between open data on the one hand and the other things that you do with data. So one of them you described as the health system, where there's an access and exchange for medical records. Okay?
Yes.
Many economies around the world are doing this kind of thing, so if you go to different outlets, doctors can have access to data. Obviously, security and privacy become absolutely paramount. So in our discussions on the PDPA and on other legislation, there is some confusion about whether private sensitive data, and let's not worry about other types like financial records or national security issues, let's focus on medical, can be shared, or it has to be stored on a particular server. So we saw yesterday from New Zealand the idea of cloud first. In other words, an acceptance that cloud infrastructure is going to be the primary tool for being able to share things. But there may or may not be specific legislation in Thailand that prevents the placing of this data even outside the original premises, let alone on a cloud. Could you talk about that a little bit? Not the open data side, but the sensitive data side. And I'll just flag the second question. It's going to be about digital skills and training in digital literacy, etc. So I'll come to the second one in a minute if you can address the first one first. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. I think that the issue about the health data is an important one. It's exclusive for us to think of how we decide of this. So the patient who would like to participate in the Health Link project, they might sign the consent to participate in the project. So it's like your advocation to participate in the project. And also we work with the Krung Thai in the application Pao Tang and also D.Dopa from the Ministry of Interior to do the citizen identification. So they might identify themselves first and then register to the system. And when then register to the system will activate in the cloud center of the government, GDCC, government data center. That the same data center with the Ministry of the Defense use. And the system will alert to the hospital to prepare the data. When they prepare the data, they will keep the patient data in the hospital because we grant the cloud server to each hospital. So they prepare data and keep it in the hospital their own. And when the doctor identify themselves by the system of the Thai Medical Council, that identify that he is a doctor and he is a doctor of this hospital to participate in the project as well. So they can access to the patient file. When they activate the system, the central system will draw the information from each hospital and incorporate in the patient file for the doctors to see. So it seems like the decentralized model in the majority, but some hospitals might be in the seems like a central model because they prepare the data and keep it in the center. But just a few hospitals is up to its capability. And also we consider about the PDPA and data security as well. We do the encryption. So when the patient data come in the system, we divide in the minimal part and encrypt every single part of the data of the information. And when the doctors enter it to the system and push in their public key and also the private key, and the data will decrypt and the doctor can see the data. So unfortunately, is anyone can access to data. They cannot do anything with this because it's already encrypted. And we consider it's about the blockchain in the future. We try to work with the Sirat hospitals about the blockchaining the data as well. And for the second part is about in the training. In the Big Data Institute, we also provide the training in big data for the country as well, especially in the government part, because we think that it's important for them to have the capabilities in working with their own data, and it would be beneficial. And we also offer the public class as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much ครับคุณหมอครับ Please give a warm applause again to Dr. Thanakirt.
ขอบคุณครับ Thank you so much.
I think for the past 5 years and for the next 5 years, I think we will all see the big changes because of the efforts that you put in. I was the customer of the Jorongorn University Hospital, and I was surprised that they also could tell me what types of insurance that have that I'm supposed to be covered when some of the expenses might not be covered by the government pension. This is something that reduce a bottleneck, reduce a pain point, and I think our public health system will start moving forward and make it more accessible and more convenient. So thank you for your tremendous efforts ครับ all the best ครับขอบคุณครับคุณหมอครับ
ครับขอบคุณครับ Thank you so much ครับ
Okay, before we take a lunch break, I think we are fortunate to have Mr. Richard Andrew, co-chair Asia Pacific Elderman Global Advisory, to discuss about how the open government data related to the transparency, accountability, and the need for public participation. I think these are the three critical aspects of the Office of Public Sector Development Commissions. And so Mr. Richard is with us. So Mr. Richard, the floor is yours. I think that they might have to do something with the podium. Okay, ครับ Okay, Mr. Richard Andrews is here. Okay, thank you. Would you like us to move the podiums a little bit, or this is okay? I think people can see, yeah.
Great, thanks. Great. Okay. Well, look. Good morning, everybody. I have the privilege as well as the challenge of being the last presenter for this wonderful conference. But firstly, let me just say thank you on behalf of Edelman to the OPDC for arranging or inviting Edelman to participate in this conference. Had we have known that you were organising this years ago, we would have joined earlier. But please do keep up the great work. We wanted to share really our latest annual trust survey, or what we call the Trust Barometer. And our congratulations to the OPDC for initiating, driving, and basically hosting this conference in ASEAN for the last 11 years. My name's Richard. I am an Australian, but I've been living and working and even started my family in the Asia-Pacific region, particularly here in Southeast Asia, for the last 25 years. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm the co-chairman of Edelman Global Advisory, which is part of the Edelman Global Communications and Strategic Advisory firm. At Edelman, my work is centered around advising private sector clients. Maybe I'll hold it instead. My apologies to the interpreters. Better? Yes. Great. Okay. Thank you. So my job at Edelman Global Advisory is actually to work with private sector clients who are based all around the world, who are trying to do better work and collaborate better with governments. So the theme of this conference and the focus of credibility around government is of great personal and professional interest to me. So I now have the privilege and the challenge, as I say, of being the final speaker of the conference. So let's dive into the presentation, starting with some context. This one. Great. So since 2001, Edelman has tracked trust in institutions among consumers and citizens across the world. As a reflection of public confidence in an institution's legitimacy, competency, and intent, trust is fundamental to any form of effective governance. This has been most clearly demonstrated during the COVID-19 pandemic. During COVID, questions were raised whether governments are being truthful on COVID data, whether governments are competent, whether they have our best interest at heart, and frankly, whether they have distributed our taxes carefully. In that sense, it was a time when government's trust capital was being closely examined by consumers and citizens. Governments had to use that capital to get their countries, economies, and societies out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the timing and the results of our 2023 Trust Barometer are revealing in terms of what consumers and citizens feel about government, business, and other institutions. Edelman was invited to this conference because a number of your governments use our Trust Barometer results as one of your references for measuring your own good governance and credibility. So you asked Edelman to outline our methodology for the past 22 years, to see how that compares with other references you use, and also to understand how you might be able to improve your rankings. So let me spend a minute on that now. The 2023 Trust Report was conducted at the end of 2022 via online public opinion surveys of around about 32,000 respondents in 28 countries, including 9 in the Asia-Pacific region. Broadly speaking, public opinion surveys are the most straightforward and intuitive way of measuring trust. Across the fields of political science and psychology, Self-reported surveys like our Trust Barometer have also proven to be accurate and reliable. Our methodology is designed carefully to ensure that results are representative of the countries which we cover, and over the last 10 years, this has included an increasing number of Asia-Pacific countries. Diving into a little bit more detail, our questionnaires are designed, programmed, translated, and localized with local markets in mind so that they make sense in the local context and are understood by the respondents. For example, our Thai surveys are only in Thai language and use simple and vernacular language that is easily understood by the native speakers here in Thailand. We set quotas on age, gender, and region in order to generate a representative sample of the market. And lastly, any sensitive questions are not asked in some markets, given that some of the results to those questions could be a little less reliable. With that overview of our methodology, let us quickly examine what is trust before we dive into the results of the 2023 Trust Barometer. Over the last 1.5 days of this conference, last 1.5 days, this conference has closely examined the topics of the efficiency, transparency, and just this morning, the openness of governments. And to the credit of the OPDC, they've taken these themes further by adding to this year's conference the concept of credibility, which other speakers have already covered well yesterday and today. So let me spend some time now on what Edelman means by trust and how it is relevant to the results of our 2023 Trust Barometer, especially in terms of trust in government. Trust is generally defined as citizens' confidence in an institution, including confidence in reliability, competence, and intentions. Some examples of these types of trust during the pandemic were confidence that a government agency is being truthful about COVID-19 data and competent in guaranteeing public health to all of us as the citizens. Taken together, trust is an important indicator of an institution's legitimacy in a society. Therefore, in the area of governance, trust is critical for the stability of politics and civil relations, public goodwill towards institutions, and ultimately the survival of political systems and governments. And low trust societies are often correlated to political and social dysfunction. High trust societies, regardless of the type of democracy or the system of government, tend to function well, do well economically, and are more resilient in crises. The very real implications of trust upon society is why measuring, tracking, and caring about trust is important for us participating in this conference and for Edelman in the work that we do globally. With that, let me now dive into some of the more relevant results of our 2023 Trust Barometer. A feature of the 2023 Trust Barometer was the theme of polarization. Our discussion on trust is very relevant right now, coming at a critical point in global society amidst rising polarization, namely economic pessimism, institutional shifts, mass inequality, and disinformation. These issues are also present in the personal, economic, and wider fears among respondents. Given the economic climate, personal fears are, unsurprisingly, more immediate and tangible. And it is worth noting that climate change is the leading threat. Indeed, the linkage between personal fears and climate change are clear and growing. In terms of economic anxieties, we observed that economic optimism has basically collapsed globally, with one exception, China, and even then the result was a modest 1-point increase. When we look at the 9 Asia-Pacific countries, we notice a significant year-on-year drop in optimism. Some even dropped 20 points. Pleasingly, there are some standouts, including the fallout in optimism in Thailand being only 2 points, which is the least of its neighbors and its peers in the Asia-Pacific region. So well done, our Thai colleagues in the room. In terms of institutional imbalance, and hopefully some of these statistics are visible. If not, the copy of the presentation will, of course, be available after today. In terms of institutional imbalance, we observed that the differences in institutional trust adds up to broad imbalance, especially between government and business. Here we see the percentage of people who trust in business, in government, and the difference between the two in the chart. Regionally, there's about a 5-point trust gap, and overall business is more trusted than government, according to our trust barometer. This imbalance is less than the global average of an 11-point trust gap, thanks to the countries listed on the left-hand side of the chart. However, whilst less extreme, the majority of markets in Asia-Pacific show that business is still more trusted than government. This includes Thailand, Malaysia, Australia, Indonesia, and others. And only in China and Singapore is this the other way around. Yet across the Asia-Pacific, what is also clear is that government is leaving a space for other players to work with consumers and citizens. So who stepped in to fill this space left by governments? It is in fact business and NGOs, which have surpassed the trust given to government. It may not be by much, just 5 points, but this still represents substantial ground lost and actually an opportunity for governments to reclaim. In many cases within the Asia-Pacific, there are both generational patterns of change as well as positive indicators of strengthened societies and economies. Within these, people's fortunes or wealth and their general well-being, how they feel about themselves, are no longer solely reliant upon or determined by the centralized guidance of government. Facing many nations now is the challenge of whether governments are willing to embrace the changed nature of the world they now live in and serve the people who live in the communities which they govern. So why are business and civil society, including NGOs, able to fill the gap left by governments? When we examined trust in these other institutions, we note that transparency and authority of information are clear indicators of trust. In terms of disinformation, businesses and NGOs, instead of governments, are less likely to be seen as sources of false information. And interestingly, media as an institution did not get good results either. Media fares just as poorly as government in the Asia-Pacific region. Turning now away from government as an institution and examining the people who run governments, we note some interesting results. So we're shifting here from examining the organizations to the people who lead those organizations, and we're talking about government. In short, our results represented on this slide demonstrate that compared to leaders in business and civil society, the leaders in government are actually the least trusted institutional leaders. Government leaders suffered a 3% decrease from 2022, and interestingly, CEOs and scientists have also suffered a decrease. This reflects a greater polarity and insularity in people's worlds, and this is a worrying trend and one which risks an increase in so-called echo chambers in society as well as in politics, and this we have seen most prevalent in the United States and Europe and other so-called Western democracies. Continuing on the theme of polarization, the results are quite revealing in terms of how the Asia-Pacific compares with countries in other regions. The key takeaway here is that of the 9 Asia-Pacific countries covered, all sit within the moderately polarized or less polarized bands. And 3 of the 4 ASEAN member states sit within the less polarized band, So you can give yourselves a pat on the back for our ASEAN government colleagues here. This is really encouraging and indicates that the governments here in Southeast Asia have a relatively positive environment in which to do your important work. However, there is no basis for rest by governments in addressing this polarization. Distrust, weak social fabric, and an unfairness are seen as key drivers of polarization. And the risks of all of these are present as the Asia-Pacific region undergoes continued, accelerating economic and social transformations. And the final observation on the polarization topic is that we observe interesting results in terms of a weakening in social fabric. Whereas the Asia-Pacific's average broadly falls just short of the global average, the results indicate that Thailand and Malaysia show some worrying perceptions. So who can guide these nations and governments? In Asia, we see leaders in business and civil society alongside teachers as those most likely and able to create unity. Yet two interesting points stand out here. First is that government leaders straddle or bridge the fence of opinion on this matter. While we do note polarity in trust in government, people actually still want government to have a positive role in their lives. Government and its leaders are still central to our nations and thus central to the proper functioning of our societies. This is very encouraging for all of us participating in this conference and certainly for the role that I play at Edelman Global Advisory. The second point is the decidedly or clear negative perception of the rich and powerful. Asia's accelerating socio-economic transformation is certain to create far more rich and powerful individuals as well as large businesses and family-owned multinational companies. So we observe two potential caveats or howevers or buts here. Firstly, large firms globally have seen their reputations and trust tumble or decrease due to the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few individuals or corporations. So we must not assume that all business leaders are immediately associated with trust or an ability to foster unity. The other, however, or but, is that business leaders are able to bring people together, but that should not be automatically equated or equal to trust. Values and the impact that businesses and their leaders have on society are constantly and publicly being scrutinized. This scrutiny will continue and likely increase. This scrutiny is reflected in businesses' increase in perception of ethics, which has risen by 18 points between 2020 and 2023. So for those of us participating in this conference, there is an interesting key message here, and that is consumers and citizens want more engagement from business. Moreover, across all categories, respondents have indicated that their expectation is high for business to intervene on key societal issues. Notably, the demand for greater intervention by business needs to be balanced with the negative perceptions of what I mentioned a moment ago about the rich and powerful. So in balance, consumers and citizens want government to work with business and civil society to bring about positive change on key issues and basically to help build greater trust again in government. This was mentioned in a number of the opening session presentations yesterday, including by the Deputy Secretary General of the OPDC and also the Deputy Governor of Bangkok. And I believe this is a critical conclusion for those of us participating in this conference and for me in my role at Edelman. To support this key conclusion of our 2023 Trust Barometer, the public perceive that optimal outcomes are 4 times more likely if governments and business work as partners. In turn, the same conclusion shines through in the 2023 Trust Barometer's results for what businesses need to do to navigate this polarized world, namely to support its home base be collaborative with government, advocate for the truth, and have the courage to take a stand on key issues. I emphasize to you today the second point on this slide as an opportunity for all of us and the business community who I represent today, with the opportunity to work with business in identifying, designing, and deploying your important work in Southeast Asia. In closing, I just want to emphasize that now more than ever, sorry, 3 points. Now more than ever, Asia's socio-economic transformation requires that balance between all parties and ambitions to avoid polarization. No one or single party is trusted to deliver on its promises, but there is a clear expectation that each party has a role to play and must cooperate. In this context, Asia deserves its success, and to do so, trusted and credible governments are key to our society's successes. Thank you for your interest and time, and I look forward to working with you to evolve our trust barometer in ways which help the very important government work in Southeast Asia and the Asia-Pacific region, which you are all doing. Thank you.
Okay, from this, for people in the Zoom, please write the questions in the chat, and then we will respond as fast as we can. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll keep it brief. So fascinating. I wanted to explore your point that there's an expectation that business gets engaged on major issues and should contribute to them. So this is terribly controversial. I'd like to use 2 examples. One, in Australia, there's this program, this proposal called The Voice, which is a way of expressing Indigenous views to Parliament. It's become very controversial. Governments, people from the no camp are admonishing business for having an opinion about it. And they say, how dare you speak on behalf of all your staff and customers like this? It's not your job, stick to the knitting. So that's one. Another one here, read the Bangkok Post comments from business on the situation as a result of the election. Most of the comments from business are, we don't want protests. We don't want protests. We want a tidy, stable government. Let's get on with it. Almost saying, I don't care who the Prime Minister is, let's have one. Rather than recognizing an idea that if there isn't a protest, then the democracy ranking of the country may drop, and that has an economic impact. So this is a complex area, but can you explore a little bit more about the dimensions of the expectation of business in getting involved in big issues? Because I don't think it's very sort of black and white or binary. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Good question. Yes, it's sort of like handing the keys of the jail to the prisoners, or the wolf in sheep's clothing. There's lots of analogies in English, at least. It's a good question. What we're saying is relative to NGOs, civil society, and the government itself. Business actually, by virtue of its globalized nature and the way that it operates across borders, is actually fulfilling some of the gaps which government has left behind. I think governments understand the license to operate concept in more acute terms, and the advent of technology which brings issues immediately into the hands of the citizens in the communities in which they operate drives their behaviour and brings them closer to the communities in which they operate. So their reaction is driven, to your point, commercially. So do you trust an organisation that is actually commercially driven? But actually, financial results are a wonderful motivator. Self-interest is a wonderful motivator. And if the business communities are operating in communities, they're employing people in those communities, they're selling their goods and services into those communities, there's actually, if you think about it, they're in election mode every single day, thanks to the way which these devices bring the bad stuff bring it to our attention, frankly. So in that sense, I think you have businesses are operating on a daily political cycle, whereas governments actually operate on slower political cycles. 3 years, 5 years, 12 years, whatever it may happen to be, or forever in some cases. So I think that's where it's the closeness and the speed to respond that means that businesses are good vehicles, or at least partners, to assist governments in some of society's major issues. I hope that helps to answer your question, in part. Thank you.
Okay, last minute questions from the audience. Well, I think in this presentation on the trust and the trust barometers, I think Thailand has many good cases in which we can, demonstrate to other ASEAN members. Office of Public Sector Development Commissions was working closely with I would say almost NGO group called Thai Health Promotion Foundations. In Thai means สำนักงานกองทุนสนับสนุนการสร้างเสริมสุขภาพหรือสสส. I think especially on the road accident preventions and health preventions. I think the Thai Health Promotion Foundation has done a very good job. The office has only 66 people, but responsible for the whole country.
Incredible.
Because they use a lot of network, and I think one of the output from this study by the OPDC is governing by network, in which we have to trust the NGO, we have to trust the local community, we have to bring public participation, because a road accident cannot be prevented in the same way, in a very uniform way. In Bangkok, in the city, in the urban area, in the rural area, they're much different. So I think this is something that I think we may have to come back and revisit how we can look at your study, how we can refocus engagement with all the NGO, because we have many good NGOs. Not all are good, but I would say in Thailand we are very fortunate that I do believe that the most NGO are genuine and they're quite open to solve the societal problem, because governmental agency simply cannot tackle very complex issues. You talk about society engagement, you talk about government business working together, and I think OPDC also brought up a very good example yesterday and today. Because OPDC has been working closely with Joint Foreign Chamber of Commerce in Thailand in addressing business concern, business operators. Yesterday, work with visa was brought up, and those things. So I think this is a very good point to conclude, the seminar. I think we have had a very successful 1 day and a half. Thanks to all the keynote speakers, from different countries, from Singapore, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from France, from New Zealand, from Korea, and also from Thailand. We also have had many examples in which we can, compare and maybe I would say unlearn and relearn. I think this is a very important part. And lastly, I think the OPDC has organized this as a seminar, not only to provide opportunity for successful agency to share experiences, but also to provide opportunity for other organization, governmental agency, which may not have sufficient budget or funds, to go abroad, to have this opportunity, to learn successful cases, new ideas. Sometimes we call external knowledge, from expert and people with experiences. Because I think OPDC believe that accessibility to best practices should be for all. Okay. In the past, we tend to have this accessibility to the public agency that can collect fees and taxes and have so much money. For example, Ministry of Finance that can, finance their workforce all the time. But other ministry, like Ministry of, Human Security and Social Development and Human Security, sometimes they also need helps in, revitalize and also in reform their public procedures and so on. And I think this is this seminar, I think, has done a wonderful job for all public agencies in Thailand. So having said that, I would like to congratulate again OPDC for an excellent 1 day and a half. And I wish participants on site and also to Zoom all the best of luck. And we're looking forward to seeing you next year. Thank you very much. Okay, so lunch is being served for those who are in Bangkok. And I think we will wrap up and looking forward to see you next time ครับสนุกให้ enjoy อาหารนะครับข้างหลังเขาพร้อมจะเสิร์ฟแล้วครับโอเคเดี๋ยวต้องมีจับฉลากอีกนะฮะวันนี้ จริงๆน่าจะให้คุณจุ๋มจับนะ ผมจับไปแล้วเมื่อวานนะเดี๋ยวคนเดิมได้อีก นะครับนี่ดร.โชติมานะครับจากกพรนะครับแม่งานใหญ่นะครับเจ้านายผมคุณแพรวณิชใช่ไหมครับครับเรงนูนครับเชิญครับเป็นสตาร์บัคนะครับครับขอบคุณมากนะครับขอบคุณครับที่มาร่วมครับเชิญครับเชิญรับประทานอาหารกลางวันครับ